Couple things before we start. Obvious content warning. Some of these stories are a bit disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised. If you have a story you'd like to send my way, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to submit your story. And if I sound a slight bit off, I have a summer cold, so I apologize. Pretty sure I got it from someone at the zoo. But anyways, enjoy. My friends and I loved going to this local festival that our county held every year in July. They had live music on an open field where you could bring your own blankets, chairs, and drinks. They had some fair games and food, drink, and craft booths set up for you to shop till your heart's content. They were never really a bad time. Between the single people, the groups of friends like us, and even the families with kids and older couples perusing the crafts, everyone always seemed to be in high spirits and looked after one another. That's exactly what we were expecting when we went there this time. There were 5 of us that went there together: Ashton, Nevaeh, Tanner, Paige, and myself. We brought a couple of blankets and a small cooler with our beverages of choice. We just lounged around talking and enjoying the electric atmosphere that surrounded us. The band was full of energy and everyone in the crowd was cheering them on for more, and after the band was done, there was going to be an intermission before the finale. The finale was going to be fire jugglers, so they had set up an area in front of the stage where there was a small fire pit. While they were setting up, my friends and I walked around the booths, got ourselves something to eat, and even played a couple of games, betting on who would do the best and which of us would fail miserably. Once it started getting darker, we heard someone talking through the audio system from the stage, and decided to start making our way back to the field to settle down again with more drinks and entertainment. When we got back there, we danced to the music and waited for the show to start. It was nearing the end of the main event, so there were already a lot of people that were drunk, or should I just say under some kind of influence. We all laughed as we watched other people being silly with their friends too. Then the lights on the stage dimmed, telling us that they were ready to start. But it wasn't dark for long. The stage came alive with swirling flames and dancers going to the rhythm of the song. It was very impressive, and quite beautiful. We all watched in awe, and the crowd cheered them on as they landed each successful stunt, one after another. There was one particular guy that I noticed on several occasions that was absolutely enthralled by the entertainers. He was whistling, clapping for them. He would holler out, wanting them to do more, all while dancing and pretty much headbanging to their music. He was pretty obviously drunk, but enjoying himself, and he wasn't being a nuisance to anyone around him either, so no one was bothering him, of course. Then, the show came to an end, and many people started packing up, mostly the ones with the kids. My friends and I were all still sitting on our blankets talking and deciding on if we wanted to stick around longer, or if we should go too. We started gathering up our stuff, but a few of us still wanted to go check out some of the booths. While we were waiting for Tanner and Paige to finish getting their stuff packed up, I was looking around, taking in the atmosphere. They had the music playing again, and there were some people laying on the grass together. I saw the families leaving with the kids excitedly talking about the day, and I even spotted the man from earlier that was next to us. He was spinning around and dancing, slowly making his way towards the stage. The fire pit up front was still going, and I assumed since they weren't the ones to set it up, they weren't going to be putting it out either. But it was contained and people were taking notice of it to either avoid it, or they were using it as a backdrop for their selfies. I even thought that it would be nice to get a picture of all of us with it as well. But then the happy and euphoric moment would be brutally ended. I watched the drunk man climb up onto the stage as he continued dancing and singing. I instantly knew that this was not going to end well, and I looked around for anyone that I had seen him with. There was a girl and a guy that were standing with him during the show, but now I didn't see them anywhere, not even by the stage. I thought to myself, I need to find someone in charge to let them know so that they could get him down. But I was out of time. I turned to mention it to my friends, and the man yelled out something and jumped right into the fire. The air filled with screams and gasps as we watched him land in it, and the flames engulfed him. Ashton, Tanner, and I ran towards the man, hoping to be able to help somehow as we yelled at our other friends to get help. Before we reached him, he'd stood up and started screaming. He managed to get out of the pit, but he was still on fire. Knowing how intoxicated he was and how he danced around with a bottle, I'm sure he had spilled it on himself as well, making this so much worse. The man ran around screaming for help and flailing his arms, and the crowd of people that was forming recoiled in horror. They were all desperate to keep him away from them, but no one was doing anything to help him. As he ran towards people, they would shove him away, or he would run into a piece of the building, causing it to begin a new flame that people were trying to put out. Tanner and I were trying to catch him to make him drop on the ground, but he wouldn't stop moving, as one might expect. Your mind is already altered by the alcohol, and now you're in pain and don't know what to do. I thought about it afterwards, and God, I can't even imagine how you would handle that kind of situation. Tanner actually ran after the guy, tackling him, which also caused him to get burned, but we at least got him to the ground. And that's when a few of us patted him down and tried to get him to respond to us while we waited for help. We were in the middle of a field. We didn't have much that we could really help with or do. I could only pray that he was still alive as he wasn't responding. I was frozen with fear as everything around me started moving slowly. People were screaming all around, and the once lively festival grounds now looked a bit like a hellish landscape, with small fires starting everywhere. Those agonizing screams from the man replayed in my mind until the wails of the sirens finally drowned out my own thoughts. They started checking his vitals, at least confirming that he was still alive, as they got him on the stretcher to wheel him off. We watched as they loaded him up and left, leaving the rest of us with these haunting memories of what had just unfolded in front of us. We all tried to move on and shake off the event that we had just witnessed, but I don't think anyone could really move on from that. Tanner especially. He probably saved that man's life by tackling him to the ground and patting out the fire. He wasn't talking much, so we all thought it was best to leave. I know it was a pretty restless night for me, but I felt bad for Tanner as well. I wanted to add that the accident was covered on the news. The man had third-degree burns all over his body, and it also affected his eyesight. I was thankful to hear that he had survived and told Tanner about it too, but that night still makes me sick to think about. That festival was always a lot of fun for me and my friends, and now that will always be a memory of how an innocent night of fun can quickly turn to chaos and change lives forever. I was just a young, curious child at the time of this event. My parents were going to be taking us 5 kids to a fair of sorts. They held it in our county every summer. I remember going there the previous years, and I remember it just being a time where we could run around and play games, ride the rides, and eat sugar until we crashed. And this year wasn't going to be any different. As we got our tickets and went through the gate, The smell of funnel cakes and popcorn hit my nose. I looked around to take in all the activities and could hear others screaming and laughing in excitement, and I couldn't wait to dive in and try everything. Since there were 5 of us to 2 adults, we all had to go together around all the stalls, games, and rides. We took turns on the games, trying out the ones that we wanted. I typically sat out the smaller, child-oriented ones like the tiny fishing game, or the one where you just picked up a rubber duck. I wanted to play the ones where I threw the ball at the bottles, or even used the hammer to hit the bell. I may have been a little girl, but I also thought that I was a lot stronger than I actually was. There was also one activity that they had every year that I always enjoyed, and that was the sand art. My poor parents probably had a full shelf of just my little jars of sand, but they always encouraged our creative side, so I was thankful for that. I had just celebrated my birthday a few weeks prior to this fair, so I also had my own spending money, and was hoping to make a special art for my parents. They gave me permission to go to it, as I was within their sight and ran over to it. I picked out the perfect glass vase shaped like a heart, and I began to fill it with what I thought were my parents' favorite colors. While I was waiting for a different color, I would look around at all the movements surrounding me when a man caught my eye. He was standing near a trash can, smoking, and just staring right at me, too. When we made eye contact, he smiled and winked at me. I don't know why, and I couldn't explain it as a kid, but something about him made me feel overwhelmed. At first, it was like when I hear my dad call my name in a stern voice, and you know you're in trouble at that point. But this was fear. I wasn't afraid of my dad, so I quickly looked back down at my art and tried to just rush through finishing it. When I got close to being done, now just waiting for the cork to close it, I looked around for my parents and saw them nearby at another stall. I grabbed my vase and hurried over to show them my work. While they were complimenting me, I sighed in relief when I looked around for the man and couldn't see him. I just shook it off, thinking it was just me being paranoid, and I continued to have fun with my family. After walking around some more and trying out the other games and crafts, we stopped for a brief moment so that my mom could take my baby sister to the restroom to change her. I started looking around all the stalls, and I saw one that I wanted to check out. They had some large stuffed animals, one of those being an elephant, which was my favorite. My dad told us that we could go shortly, so I impatiently waited. Once I spotted my mom, I walked up to her and told her about the stall as well. Again, I was a very excited child, and as soon as I heard the word okay, I darted over to it to see what I needed to do. While standing in line, I looked back at my family, and I saw that they were still there trying to get my sister back in her stroller. So I turned back to wait. I finally reached the front, and I learned that the elephant I saw was a prize for the game where you had to shoot the targets. I don't think I even got close to winning the elephant, but I did get something else, equally as fun. I turned back ready to show my parents my winnings when I realized that they were not by the restrooms anymore. I thought to myself that it wasn't a problem, that they were probably just nearby at another stall. But as I continued to look around and not see any familiar faces, a slight bit of panic started to set in. So I walked back over to the restrooms, and I began shouting for my parents and older siblings, inside and out. However, my efforts seemed meaningless, because I still could not locate them. I walked around the nearby stalls and even stood on one of the benches, but the fear had already set in. I was officially lost, and I didn't know what to do or who to turn to. As I stood by the bench watching all these other people carrying on with their evening, I finally did spot a face that I recognized, but it was not one that I wanted to see again. It was the smoking man. He was, again, standing, or more so leaning, against a hand-washing station, but still staring right at me. At that moment, the sense of dread washed over me, and I realized how vulnerable I was. He started walking towards me, and something in my 10-year-old brain told me, do not let him get close to you. So I immediately started walking away as quickly as possible, and hopefully without alerting him. Desperate to lose him in this maze of people and festival attractions, I ducked under people as I passed them, cut through lines, and went behind stalls. But every time I looked back, he always seemed to be close by. He may not have been looking directly at me every time, but knowing that he was so close was overwhelming. I couldn't seem to lose this guy. I stood by one stall trying to figure out my best course of action. I remember telling myself that I needed to either find the entrance or find an adult that looked like they were in charge. I then recalled the ticket booth near the entrance, and when I spotted the same neon light, I knew I needed to get back there. I didn't immediately see the man, so I ran out of the stall in the direction of the light. I was proud of myself, thinking that I was going to finally lose this guy. I was going to get to the front and tell the ticket booth people that I was being followed, and then they would track down my family. Problem solved. But then I ran into another person, which caused me to get turned around and slowed me down. While I was regaining my thoughts and figuring out where to go, I felt a yank on my arm. To my horror, it was the same smoking man. At that moment, fear consumed me, paralyzing my body and clouding my thoughts. I felt defeated, and I didn't know what else to do. What else could I do? But then he smiled at me, the most sinister smile I think I've ever seen, and said, "I'll help you find your mommy and daddy." I was never more terrified in my life, and as I stood there with him tugging on my arm to follow him, something finally kicked on in me. My fight or flight triggered as a last attempt to get away. I threw myself to the ground, almost like a rag doll, and started screaming as loud as I could. I threw the biggest tantrum that I possibly could. I screamed, I kicked, I flailed until everybody was looking at us. The whole time, this guy still had a tight grip of my arm, so I added to it. I started screaming that I wanted my mom and dad. I screamed, "Let go of me." I screamed, "I don't know you," until he finally let go. Of course, when he did let go, he backed away from me a few steps and said that he was going to help me find my parents. But almost everyone around was now staring at this guy. So he just threw his hands up and nonchalantly walked away. Being older now, it actually frustrates me that no one ever questioned this man or thought to stop him. After he was completely out of view, swallowed by the crowd of people, I stood up and started walking the opposite way of him. Someone approached me who was wearing one of the vests for the staff and asked me if I was lost. She at least looked kinder, and she didn't scare me. She led me right to one of the ticket booths I was looking for, and I helped give a description of my parents. However, my parents actually heard my tantrum and immediately started trying to find where it was coming from. I later learned that, while I was at the game, my family had started walking to a different stall, the one that they thought I was talking about. And within the time of me finishing the game, I had walked the opposite direction of them while they were just circling back. It was kind of silly and crazy that we never ran into each other. In the end, I did shortly meet back up with my family, but that guy was long gone. They never saw him or caught him. My parents said that I was very brave and smart for doing what I did, and it definitely could have gone a lot worse. We still joke about how my tantrums even then got me what I wanted, but I also can't help but think about that awful smile and why he chose me. And even worse, what his plans were if I would have gone with him. I am, and always have been, a very creative person. I enjoy being able to find something, anything, and see potential to turn it into something better or renew it to good use again. I make jewelry, clothing pieces, hair accessories, and art pieces. My roommate/partner and I even started our own business selling our products, as well as other items such as gems, minerals, and tarot cards. All that fun, witchy stuff. One thing we like to do is buy a booth spot at our local summer fest that we have in our state. It's a celebration of our county specifically. I also make sure to make an excess of items to buy and bring even more supplies to customize items, and make more on demand if needed. The event that I would like to share with you took place one of those days that I was at my booth. My partner was working the last day of the festival, so I had to handle it myself. I teased that it was planned to get out of not having to break down our stuff, but that's neither here nor there. So the last night of the event was always a grab bag. You could spot the people that practically lived here through all 3 days that it was there. You saw people that were just trying to catch a glimpse of the festival joys, and those people that were just there because someone dragged them to it. I sat behind my booth displaying an array of handmade treasures while I was working on another piece, just taking in the energetic atmosphere and the aroma of various homemade sweets. I've always been very social, so it was easy for me to strike up a conversation with anyone, and it seemed to draw people towards me too. So, when I saw a couple approach my booth, I thought it was just business as usual, at first. They both walked up, smiling at first, but the woman quickly looked disinterested, with her eyes wandering elsewhere. The man greeted me and I started to go into the different items that I offered. He asked me how I made the pendulums, and as I explained the process, he actually seemed interested. I would glance over at the woman while speaking, and notice that she was not paying much attention to our conversation, if any at all. She was looking at some of the things on my table, but also seemed to be looking around at the other nearby booths. I tried to involve her in the conversation, but I would barely get a side-eye from her. Then, the guy asked me about one of my crocheted bralettes that I had out, motioned to his partner about how she had one like it, and she just gave a half-assed fake smile and said, "Yeah, cool." I could see where this was going, or so I thought. I tried complimenting her, saying that the color would look really good with her complexion, and even offered an earring and necklace set that would match it. She still wasn't interested, but the guy was, so I started showing him the pieces. While he was looking them over, he would hold them up to her and ask if she liked them, and she would give very abrupt answers. However, I did notice that she was looking at my hair sticks, so I tried asking if she used them or if she wanted to try them at that time. I didn't mind giving away some items, especially if it meant getting my name out there or making a potential purchase in the future. Not to mention, if I could get her to loosen up or be in a better mood, it would be a win for everyone. But she immediately made a comment about how the idea seemed odd. The man quickly apologized and asked what was wrong with her, but she didn't answer. Part of me was beginning to think maybe this wasn't about me, and something had happened prior to them approaching my booth. I gave a lighthearted laugh and said that it was fine, joking about how it took me some time to figure them out myself. The guy decided on a purchase, and handed me a card, so I went to grab my card reader from my tub behind me, as well as a freebie. I like to give the little stuff away as a thank you. As I went to stand back up and turn back towards them, I suddenly felt a very sharp pain and pressure in my arm. I looked over at it, and I saw one of my hair sticks protruding from it. And that's about when things started going in slow motion. I heard the man yelling, "What did you do?" And then the two began arguing. The woman made a hand gesture and started walking away, as the guy seemed conflicted on what to do. Then, the last thing that I remember was all the sound around me slowly getting muffled, my vision tunneling until I blacked out. I was never good with blood, especially my own. When I finally came to, there was a different man at my side wearing a reflective vest, talking on a walkie. I immediately looked over at my arm and saw the stick still protruding from my flesh, and my first instinct was to pull it out. The man stopped me, telling me that I needed to wait. I still wasn't fully conscious, so I let my head fall back down until I was awoken again. This time it was an EMT who was working on my arm, holding pressure, but the stick was now gone. I was awake at this point, as there was no blood, but the pain was pretty excruciating. I called my dad since he lived nearby to grab my stuff, because the guy said that I was going to need to get stitches. They allowed me to stay there since it wasn't life-threatening, and that way I didn't have to take an ambulance, but the police were more than willing to stay by my side. They took a lot of information from me. They asked me what happened, how it happened, and I gave them a description of the couple. When my dad arrived, he helped me pick up my items and was going to take me to the hospital, but before we left, I noticed the same guy looking at me from a distance. I immediately pointed him out to my dad and the officer that was still standing nearby. I didn't think anything else would happen, but one of the officers said that they would stay with me until we left since they hadn't found the girl. They immediately called it in and began looking for the guy. I guess he had a conscience and felt he needed to do the right thing. He didn't run or try to lose the cops, and when confronted, he explained what happened. He even gave a description of the woman, her name, and which car she was driving. She'd actually left without him. He never approached me about any of this, but explained this to the cops and asked them to tell me that he was sorry about the incident. I got to the hospital and left with a few stitches, and now I have this cool-looking circular scar on my arm. I didn't press charges, because I feel like even if she was that angry at him, or jealous even, she needed a different kind of help. But it did happen out in a public place, so the state took care of the charges, I guess. Overall, I guess I learned a few things from this. I learned that my sticks are probably too sharp, so now I've rounded them off a lot better and they're coated better to prevent such a point. And I don't make metal ones at all anymore, just wood or glass. But I also learned that while you can look for the good or the best in other people, try not to turn your back to someone who's exhibiting erratic behavior or just radiating hostility. But also, don't let that ruin a good time, friends. May your encounters be filled with light, rather than shadows. Or crazy jealous people. So, that, my friends, was a collection of summer summer festival stories. I was having a lot of trouble saying some of the words today. I won't even tell you how many times I had to redo lines in the Burning Man story, the story with the man that caught fire, because I kept trying to merge words together. Yeah, that's me today. Anyways, some good summer festival stories. stories about stuff that happens in festivals during the summer, or has happened at festivals during the summer. Festivals, summer months, scary things that happened. There you go. That's how the collection was made. Anyways, I hope that you all enjoyed these stories. I did, absolutely. I thought they were definitely scary. Being followed as a child is something that's terrifying. The jealous girlfriend at the other one, definitely not a good time. And then the other one with the man that caught fire, I feel bad for the dude. He was having a great time. And just to drunkenly accidentally ruin it really, really sucks. So, and again, if I sounded a slight bit off in this video, I do apologize. Like I said, I do have a cold. Patience and I went to the zoo on Saturday for a little event they do. It's a fun little mystery thing. It was the first time going, but I guess I don't know if they've done it before, but it was fun. Anyways, it was a great time. But there were a lot of people, so I'm sure I caught this summer cold from one of them. It kind of sucks, but it's not miserable. I'm just slightly bleh. But hopefully I sounded okay. I don't think I sounded too bad, but I wanted to cover my back end for that one. So, just in case someone said anything, I don't think any of you would, but, you know, it happens. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please do hit that thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. And if you do subscribe, leave me a comment letting me know that you're new to the channel. I will happily welcome you aboard. You can also leave me a comment letting me know your thoughts, how you're doing, what you thought of this video, and whether or not you've ever been to a summer festival-style thing that has had something happen. I don't think I mentioned this yet, but I'll say it again if I have. You can also do the super thanks, which is just a donation to the channel, a way of saying thank you to the channel, supporting it a little further. Or you can go to Patreon or join channel memberships down below, where you get early access to content like this and other things, depending on what you sign up for. Yeah. Anyways, friends, I hope you're all doing fantastic on this Wednesday. Hope you have a beautiful week so far and in the parts of the week ahead. Wow. It's going to be 102 over these next 3 days here in the Kansas area. My brain does not do well in heat, so I will be melting. Anyways, friends, I want you to remember you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you're the best you that you can be. Never forget it, and never let anyone tell you otherwise. And until I see you again, much love, and sleep well.